Day one, my motif was high tech, so had the fancy slides and followed them. Day two, it was 0 slides and a little bit more extemporaneous. Day three, I'm going to do what I often tell some grammar school students when I'm their tutor and some high schooler students to do. I'm going to hold on to the sides of my podium and attempt at least the first half of my presentation with my hands at the sides of my podium, with the idea that this is a technique to keep kids from, pulling their shirt or their hair, braids. I don't have any braids to pull. So I might even decide, and not to be quite so casual, although I've worn the wrong shoes for that, and move my feet around, I might even decide to try to keep my feet together. We'll see how well that goes. But I'm just trying to do the things that I'm asking students to put on doing themselves. So we'll see. So this is more I've typed more out, and this is a little bit less extemporaneous than yesterday's. We'll see. Remember Chesterton's words from day one. Grown-up people are not strong enough to exult in monotony. It should be exult, actually. Grown-up people are not strong enough to exult in monotony. But we want to exult in repetition. We ask our kids to retell stories, extremely important in my opinion, even though we know the stories even better than they. We ask them to repeat their grammar verbally on Tuesdays and through the week, on paper, copy work and whatnot, or in games like Geography Battleship that we played. On day one, we meditated on the power of words, like naissance, in whatever language, including Asian and Indian languages. And we considered John 17:20, quote, I pray not only for these disciples, this is Jesus speaking, I pray not only for these, but also for those who believe in me, Christ, through their word. May they all be one, as you, Father, are in me, and I am in you. The critical phrase we focused on was through their word. The word is mighty. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word and our words are the conduit through which all come to believe in the power of the resurrection of Christ. God whispers words of his grace into the hearts of men, but we are commanded to speak his words of grace to all, to invite them to the wedding of Matthew 22. Christ prayed that through our words many might believe. Our words are worth care and attention more than our hair or our dress or our curricular choices. We discussed how our words transform over time in all languages. Words live circuitous lives over centuries. We can be annoyed by that, or we can embrace the beauty of language and the challenge of wielding it well. On day two, we focused on the key of success, the key to success, failure. Fast, frequent failure that is just a normal part of practice. And though our culture and our tendency is to be impatient with ourselves and others and to demand perfection in public, we embrace practicing in public on Tuesdays and failing fast and furious as a part of our learning. We do it again and do it again and do it again, to reuse Chesterton's words again, like God creating daisies or raising the sun each morning. And here we are on day three. Order in the Court is the title you see for day three. I have a story to add to focus on the concept of order and the third rung of the trivium, rhetoric, that is the creative, the poetic, which in the trivium is the last stage of developing understanding and wisdom on some subject. So here we are, the subject. What is the subject? Hot dog eating. Okay, in the year 2000, the record for Nathan's hot dog eating contest, kind of gluttony contest, was 25 1/8 hot dogs eaten in 12 minutes. Can you imagine eating a hot dog in 30 seconds? In 2001, this skinny Japanese guy, Takeru Kobayashi, stormed the stage, decimating the record by downing 50 hot dogs in 12 minutes, almost twice as many, a huge increase from the 20-somethings that had been going on for a long time. Now, the story is ridiculous as I looked into this further. It's absolutely an interesting story year over year. One of the tiny pieces of the story is that in 2007, Kobayashi announced he seriously injured his jaw during training. He trains to down 50 hot dogs in 12 minutes, and that training is serious enough that he can damage his jaw. Okay, so it's a story with all kinds of fun bits that I'd love to share, but I'm going to skip them in the interest of time and tell you the important part. How did he down twice as many hot dogs in the 12 minutes? This skinny Japanese guy? Well, he changed the order of things. Instead of taking bite number 1 and then bite number 2 and continuing until he had eaten hot dog after hot dog, he took the hot dog out of the bun, broke it in half, swallowed half a hot dog at a time with this little wiggle that he does, this signature Kobayashi wiggle. It actually has a name. I think it's the Kobayashi wiggle. So that it would go straight into his belly, 1/2 of a hot dog at a time, and he took the remaining bun, put it in his cup of water so that it would get soggy, squished out the water so that it was a small soggy ball of dough, which he then ate, and then he'd proceed to the next hot dog.
We strive for better things.
I know, right? So this is a world record holder. If you wanted to hold a world record in something, this might be worth your aspirations. I was reminded of this in a conversation on a hike. Alana might remember that I didn't have all the details back then, but when we were hiking, I remembered this, so I thought, this is basically the Fosbury Flop variant of Nathan's hot dog eating contest. You remember perhaps that the high jump used to be a forward jump over the stick until somebody decided, I'm going to jump over backwards. A major revolution. Don't jump, turn around, then jump. New order and revolutionary. The order of things can be a tremendously powerful tool, especially for the rhetorical student, the student who is learning to really think about how to put the various dialectic pieces together, possibly differently than they had been done in the past. So we'll focus just for a moment on pi r squared, since our class yesterday, our afternoon, our second session group, talked a little bit about pi r squared. Pi r squared is a piece of grammar. It's the area of a circle equals pi r squared. Grammar school students are never evaluated beyond that. We, again, think of students at trivium level based on how we evaluate them. So we don't ask them to do more than this until they're becoming dialectic enough and addressing it in their math book. What does this mean? It means I'm going to multiply r by itself. I'm going to multiply pi. And a student who really just follows the dialectic and realizes that what this means is I'm going to find a value for pi, I'm going to multiply that by a value for the radius, and then I'm going to multiply that by the value for radius again. So a very straightforward dialectic student might say, all right, you gave me the radius of 3. So I'm going to multiply 3.14 by 3. Oh boy, 12, 1, 4, 9.42. Now I have to multiply that. That's my r number 1. I have to multiply that now by r again. Oh boy, 6, 12, 1, 18, 27, 28. And I get my answer of 28.26. Almost immediately, a teacher or tutor of this student will say, well, yeah, you followed the recipe, just like making biscuits. You followed the recipe to a T. You took a value for pi, 3.14, you multiplied it by r, and then you multiplied it by r again. But, and you even really, oh, I cherish you so much, because you know that PEMDAS mentions that you go in order from left to right. I'm sorry you don't realize that the reason your little PEMDAS rule says that is because people get mixed up with pluses and minuses. I'm going to tell you, you can throw that out the window. When you're multiplying, you can change the order of these as much as you want. And child, wouldn't it be so much easier to just multiply 3 times 3, r times r, immediately get the number 9, and then just do one long old multiplication. 3.14 times 9 will give you that exact same answer, 28.26, but you only had to do one hard bit of math instead of 2 hard bits of math. Okay. And the child will tend to, different ones go through this differently, go through a little bit of a wrestling match with themselves. Is it better? I just like following the recipe. You tell me I can go in reverse, you tell me, until they realize, oh yeah, that's a lot easier. I totally get it. Let's move on. Or let's do it again. Let's move on. When students get into Algebra 2 trig and so on, it's very common that I will recommend the students not substitute any 3.14 for pi until they get to the very end of the problem, because they often wind up doing lots of extra math if they don't wait till the very end of the problem. They multiply 3.14 by things, and it turns out that if they had just left it as pi, some of them go away, some of them combine, the math is very easy, and they struggle with this. It's a sort of a rhetoric level idea that you can design the order in which you do certain operations in math. Your order becomes important. Older students, writing papers, persuasive addresses, and judicial addresses, they tend to be handed the recipe that says, they are handed the recipe that says refutation comes down near the bottom. After you have introduced your thesis, you have walked through a narratio, you have given your first proof and the 3 subproofs, your second proof and the 3 subproofs, a third proof and the 3 subproofs. Finally, you get into the refutation, where you address the concerns that might come up. Somebody might say, well, have you thought about this? I think I have a counter argument. That's the order they're handed. I challenge my oldest students to rethink things, because Lost Tools does suggest that there's a time when students can think about order. Order is one of the major bullet points for consideration at that stage. And you can say, wait a minute, my audience is not going to listen to a word I have to say because they already have their minds made up. I want my refutation to be first, because they're immediately going to say, you're wrong. I'm going to say, why is this not wrong? I'm going to spell out my refutation and get their attention that way, suggesting that I know that my reader, what my reader has in mind. And that might spur them on to say, aha, so this writer knows something about my position, and they've got some interesting counter arguments, some interesting refutation arguments. I might go on and read their real arguments now. The order, putting that refutation up first instead of having it last, could be a real significant factor in writing a persuasive essay for that particular audience. And so order is significant. It's significant when you think about math. It's significant when you think about downing hot dogs, and it can be significant when you think about refutation. I want to conclude with a story about J.R.R. Tolkien again, because that's where we started. The Green Great Dragon. I'm going to quote the retelling of this story from Mark Forsyth's The Elements of Eloquence, How to Turn the Perfect English Phrase. Here's what he says. John Ronald Reuel Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, wrote his first story at age 7. It was about a green great dragon. He showed it to his mother, who told him that you absolutely could not have a green great dragon, and that it had to be a great green dragon instead. Tolkien was so disheartened that he didn't write another story for years. Take note, sometimes you choose your battles and your timing. The reason for Tolkien's mistake, since you ask, is that adjectives in English absolutely have to be in this order. Opinion, size, age, shape, color, origin, material, purpose, noun. Did you know that? So you can have a lovely little old rectangular green French silver whittling knife. I'll say it again. You can have a lovely little old green French silver whittling knife. But if you mess with that word order in the slightest, you'll sound like a maniac. It's an odd thing that every English speaker uses that list, but almost none of us could write it out. And as size comes before color, green great dragons can't exist. Now, we might as well play with it a little bit. Instead of a lovely little old rectangular green French silver whittling knife, shall we try to have a French rectangular lovely old little green silver whittling knife? Strange. I would propose that if you had in mind the desire to write about a lovely little old rectangular green French silver whittling knife, you would probably come up with that exact ordering of your adjectives, even though you didn't know that was the correct order. There's a slim chance you'd wonder about a couple of them, but you'd certainly think that certain orderings don't work. And it would be natural, because a lot of language is natural, and we pattern after these things. But did you know it? Probably not. So Tolkien didn't know it. His mother probably didn't know the precise ordering, but his mother said, green great dragon, that doesn't sound right. It's got to be great green dragon. Here's the rest of the story. Tolkien concluded later in life that his mother, dear mother, he had a very, very significant relationship with his mother. His father died when he was young. His mother's faith went through a traumatic time. His faith came from this. His mother's connection to him was very, very fond. So I say this with that in mind. He decided his mother was wrong. You can have a green great dragon. Can you think, this is a public question, and we'll close and then do our table talk time. Can you think of a reason why you might have a green great dragon instead of a great green dragon? It's a hard question. Don't feel badly if you can't. There are a couple of answers, and one of them might be easier to come up with than the other. Go ahead. You're thinking of that. Good. Okay, so I'll call this one artistic license. An artistic license, you can say, I want it to sound a little edgy. I want to break a rule. I want to turn the phrase so that it brightens somebody's interest in what I want to say. So that's a really good one. There's another one that's more practical, Yes. Good. Okay, so if you have a whole bunch of great dragons, you have a blue one and a green one and a yellow one, and you want to identify which one you're talking about the green great dragon, not the blue great dragon. So you're calling out the color first in order to connect, in order to make that the significant piece of the puzzle. Okay, so a practical reason, an artistic reason, and those reasons could apply to any ordering that you'd like. But of course, as a student, we like to learn the rules and then learn to break them, and learn how breaking them makes sense, right? That's it. I have a few questions on the table for you, very few. I'd like to kind of move forward quickly into announcements and to our second target talk. So today's questions are just the very first question, which you've become familiar with because I used it the same every single time. And then, do you ever feel the need to offer rebuttals or counter arguments before you even state your position? That is, do you ever feel the need to start with the phrase, I know what you're going to say, right? That's how it usually starts. I know what you're going to say, but wait, just hear me out. Number 3, can you think of a story in which the order of events or words or ideas was really critical? Tell. 4, at what age do you think kids develop the finesse to consider the order of their words before they speak? That is, they actually consider, I might get what I want from mom if I order my words one way, but if I just blurt out what I want, it might not quite work. Mother, lovely mother, you are always so kind when it comes to ice cream, okay? So when do they start thinking about the order of their words instead of blurting words out without thinking of the order? Those are the questions at the table. Let's see, I'll join the table of 2 and let you guys go. We'll go for a couple of minutes and then pause and move on to our second.